Medieval sanitation was dangerously primitive. Waste wasn't removed. It was stored beneath the floorboards. Entire families lived just above cesspits filled with decomposing human excrement. These pits emitted toxic gases, methane, ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, that filled homes from below. In enclosed spaces, they caused dizziness, unconsciousness, and even death. The gases displaced oxygen and carried airborne pathogens into every room. Bacteria like E. coli, Salmonella, and Shigella thrived in the damp conditions. Without sealed flooring, the infection spread through contact, food, and air. Every step above the pit raised the risk of illness. Cesspits were rarely cleaned. As waste built up, it overflowed into walls, floors, and storage barrels. What looked like water damage often contained human filth. Most people didn't realize the danger until they were already sick. Medieval towns relied on shallow wells for water. These were dug straight into the ground, often just a few feet away from cesspits. Cesspits were not sealed. Waste seeped into the soil and saturated the water table. The same bacteria from human feces, E. coli, cholera, typhoid, spread directly into the well water. There were no filters, no understanding of contamination. People collected water for drinking, cooking, and washing from sources already poisoned by their own sewage. In cities, hundreds of households used latrines that drained into the same soil system. A single infected cesspit could spread illness across an entire block. Families drank infected water daily, never realizing it was killing them from the inside. The result was predictable: fever, vomiting, bloody diarrhea. In many outbreaks, half the children didn't survive. As human waste broke down in cesspits, it released toxic gases. The most common were methane, ammonia, and hydrogen sulfide, produced by anaerobic bacteria feeding on organic matter. These gases rose through cracks in floors and walls. There were no ventilation systems. The air inside home became a toxic mix, heavy, flammable, and laced with pathogens. Hydrogen sulfide in low doses caused nausea, headaches, and blurred vision. In high concentrations, it paralyzed the sense of smell, then shut down the nervous system. People passed out indoors without knowing why. Methane posed another threat. It accumulated in sealed latrine spaces and ignited from open flames or lanterns. Cesspits exploded. Entire outhouses blew apart. Workers died instantly, scorched or buried in collapsing waste. Cesspit gas caused structural collapse, respiratory failure, and fatal ignition events. Medieval toilets were built from untreated wood, suspended over open pits. Planks rotted quickly under moisture and constant exposure to ammonia gas and organic acids. Structural failure was frequent. In castles, garderobes were built into stone towers, often several meters above cesspools. When supports collapsed, occupants dropped straight into concentrated waste. Most suffocated or drowned before help arrived. Public latrines posed the same risk. Shared platforms buckled under weight or erosion. Collapse events buried multiple victims in seconds. Cesspit workers, called gong farmers, were killed during routine cleanings. Many fell into pits filled above head height. With no protective gear or oxygen, escape was nearly impossible. Open cesspits and waste chutes provided ideal breeding grounds for disease vectors. The constant presence of organic matter, moisture, and heat attracted black rats, flies, and parasitic insects at every stage of decomposition. Rats fed directly on human waste and used latrine shafts as entry points into homes. Fleas on these rats transmitted Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for bubonic plague. Latrines in densely packed towns became transmission hubs for vector-borne diseases long before symptoms were understood. Flies fed and laid eggs in exposed excrement, then landed on bread, water, and food storage. With no sealed containers or disinfectants, fecal bacteria spread directly to the mouth. Each visit from a fly could transfer E. coli, cholera, or typhoid. Insects and rodents weren't incidental. They were part of the toilet system. Latrines served as active distribution points for epidemic pathogens. Toilet facilities lacked running water, soap, or drainage. Cleaning was rare. After defecation, most people wiped with straw, moss, or rags, then returned to daily activity without washing hands. Fecal residue transferred to clothing, tools, utensils, and food. In high-use areas like markets or shared homes, contact surfaces accumulated layer after layer of microbial waste. Pathogens were spread through touch, on door handles, bread loaves, fabric, and eating vessels. Even those who never entered a latrine could contract illness from surfaces touched by someone who had. There were no sanitation buffers. Infections moved person to person through basic contact. Public spaces became indirect extensions of the toilet. Surface transmission sustained constant reinfection across entire populations. Without indoor plumbing, households relied on chamber pots, portable containers used for nighttime waste. Each morning, contents were emptied into the nearest street, alley, or drainage ditch. Urban roads became open sewers. Waste pooled in uneven cobblestones, mixed with animal manure, and stagnated in public walkways. Pedestrians walked through it daily, tracking fecal matter into homes, churches, and marketplaces. There were no enforced disposal systems. Some towns had waste collectors, but coverage was limited and inconsistent. In most areas, waste disposal was done manually, by flinging it from upper windows without warning. Injuries and infections from direct hits were documented across Europe. Rain only spread the contamination further, washing raw sewage into doorways and water sources. Chamber pot disposal turned every street into a biohazard zone. Cesspits and open sewers created ideal conditions for the outbreak. Waste-fed rats and flies became vectors for disease, especially in dense cities with no containment systems. During the Black Death, rapid transmission wasn't just airborne. It was surface-bound, insect-driven, and waterborne. Toilets fed all three. Infected fleas spread plague from rat nests near latrines. Fecal bacteria weakened immune systems before plague even arrived. Latrine clusters in monasteries and poor districts became ignition points for epidemics. Toilets weren't just unsanitary, they were catalysts for biological disaster. Decomposing waste produced methane, a highly flammable gas that accumulated in sealed cesspits and enclosed latrines. Without ventilation, pressure builds quickly. Lanterns, candles, or even static sparks ignited the gas. Entire toilet structures exploded, floors shattered, waste blasted into walls, ceilings, and skin. Fatal burns and blunt trauma were common, especially for cesspit workers. Reports from the period describe sudden blasts in castles, taverns, and public privies. Ignition events killed both users and laborers, often without warning or explanation. Toilets doubled as concealed ignition chambers under daily foot traffic.